Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Today we are talking with Joanna Lynn. She is the founder of the Family Imprint Institute with an international private practice. And her tagline is, "Science tells us that our biography becomes our biology." I really love that. Welcome to the show, Johanna. It's so nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jill. Great to be with you.
So tell us all about you. How did you get into this, and what's your story, and what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, it started off, I was working at an integrative health clinic with a bunch of physicians that really understood the mind-body connection. And I found my way into this work that's all about epigenetics and family history and how any of us get to be the way we are. At the time, I was recovering from a really painful divorce. And it was the one thing that had the whole painful situation make the most sense it ever had. And how so much of the painful patterns that went on in that marriage were really reflective of some of the things I hadn't looked at from that perspective that were going on in my family and certainly his. The big joke in this work is that systems marry systems, and then it finds a way to play itself out in the long-term relationship. So at the time, that was a big reveal to me. And it was so instrumental in helping me to move past that heartbreak and really rebuild my life from a place of intentional choice.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you want to go a little deeper into the systems, marry systems?
Yes. And so a lot of the times we marry or we fall in love with what's familiar, not necessarily what we would tell a dear friend we're looking for, but there's something beyond words that's just familiar that we settle into. And the trick is we don't typically see it on the first few months of dating in that honeymoon phase. It's not until everyone gets comfortable with each other. And then it's like, oh no, you're critical like my mom, or I can't really emotionally count on you like my dad. And there's this familiar thread that in my work for years with clients in this, my belief is that it's exactly where we get set so that we can really grow in ways we wouldn't normally if we were just, sitting on a mountaintop meditating or living our life carefree and single. That these relationships bring up a lot of what is sort of sitting in the body left unnoticed, and here we come in this love relationship. It sort of brings these pieces forward that feel all too familiar yet pretty painful at the same time.
Really interesting, because all of these traumatic events that we go through in life generally cycle around people that we love.
Yeah.
Or that should love us.
Mm.
Isn't it?
Well, and they do. I've found, and I've been in this work a little over 16 years, and so I like to hold the space that it is love. And yet oftentimes when love hurts or when it feels really distorted, we've got a reason that it got distorted. That old saying, hurt people end up hurting people. This work is a lot about looking behind dad's, say, alcoholism to why did he have to numb? or behind mom being super quick to anger. Like, what is that switch that just has anger stand in front of everything as maybe a way of not feeling because she can no longer be vulnerable because of some of the things that happened to her. And so this work is really about getting clarity about the whole system. And it can help us to understand why sometimes love hurts in our most tender, close relationships in our family.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really kind of a powerful statement.
Mm.
And and like how do we recognize it and how do we fix that? Is
Mhm.
that what you do with people?
Yeah, I think a lot of people come into my work with, the pressing problem. I'm losing connection with my teenager, or it looks like we're heading for divorce, ready or not. Whenever my mother-in-law comes into the room, I, seize right up in my chest. I lose my words. And they're surprised to find out how much of what's going on today actually really deeply interconnects with what I call the family imprint. That's why my institute is named the Family Imprint Institute. Like,
Mhm.
how did we get to be this way? How are we responding this way? And so the work that I do is really working from that imprint to show up with a little more clarity, healthier boundaries, the ability to say what you feel on the outside and match what you're feeling on the inside. And so, first step is to identify how similar what's going on today is a replica of that past pain. And then we work towards resolving it and showing up in these relationships differently. I'm sure many of your listeners would agree, probably mom's not going to change, or, probably this dynamic with my brother, that's how it's going to be. But we can change. How we interact with it can be different. And that changes the whole scenario.
It really does. And nobody stays the same all the time. And
That's right.
where your mom might have been when you were a child is totally different than where she is as you're an adult, or uh, even relationships with your spouse. It
Mhm.
changes over time, and they develop different patterns of behavior based
Mhm.
on the way that you're interacting with them.
That's right. I often will tell the couples that I'm working with, if the other couple isn't ready to work, that as long as we're shifting, as long as we're connecting the dots, as long as we're showing up differently, that changes the whole dynamic of the relationship. And that often is enough.
It's a lot.
Hmm.
Almost all change that you want to happen in the world happens with yourself first.
Couldn't agree
And
more.
just reframing the way you think about things, and
Mhm.
it even starts with how you think about things, what things run through your head on a regular basis. And when you first start the practice of catching your thoughts, uh, and just looking at them rather than
Mhm.
letting them play the loop, that are often destructive loops. They
Mhm.
don't serve anybody's better or higher good. You're just like ruminating on something, and and doing that, you're causing chemical reactions in your body that's destroying your body too.
That's it. That is such a good point to bring up. We get stuck in a rut, as you're saying, but then all those stress chemicals that fire off that go along with it, can really deepen the groove of some of that misery or hopelessness or whatever that stuckness might look like given the circumstance. Mhm.
Yeah, and it prevents us from having the flexibility and imagination to find solutions to the situation that you're in. If you just get like stuck in that rut, and it's like you can't see out above on the horizon to what the possibilities are, or what the situation is trying to teach you.
That's it. We're sort of stuck in the language of the problem. And
Mhm.
that's what I've come to really appreciate about this work. We don't really make space for the story the telling of the problem, because it just becomes so well known by the body. And exactly what you've said, we sort of almost wall off to the solutions because all we can see is down the channel of the problem. We sort of want to take those blinders off and begin to get creative about what's possible. And maybe the main point is, how could you look at this differently? When you include the whole context, what might change in maybe just a tiny way you've been holding on to the situation or circumstance?
Yeah, and it's really easy to just fall into the patterns of protection that you develop as a child. And our first relationships are with our parents and our siblings,
Mm-hmm.
and wounds happen because it's people messing with other people, and
Yeah.
a, a lot of this, I call it technology, for lack of a better word on my part, is fairly new. The idea of epigenetics hasn't been around for that long, and maybe 20 years
Yeah, exactly.
isn't really that long in the scheme of things.
No.
And um, people becoming aware of patterns being passed on, and how the interaction between couples, people, partners happen, um, and how it affects the larger society even.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true. It's so interesting, as you say, we aren't taught to think systemically. We just think, oh, this is just how my relationships go, or I just have a problem with earning money or keeping money or feeling secure or feeling safe. This is just me. And one of the books I recommend most often is a book that's titled It Didn't Start With You, that speaks all about some of the cool science and latest research of epigenetics, but also some really interesting cases about the challenges that arise and how we look at it through this lens of epigenetics to make it so much more understandable so that we can finally release it and move forward from there. And so, yeah, we are getting beyond where we've been stuck in certain relationships, or even the consideration, oh, that fear that I've held, maybe it's not even mine. And tracking back, where did it come from? So we can set it down, let it go.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And people don't, I don't think, realize how much just changing you can affect the whole world.
Oh, the ripple effect is incredible.
And just taking the time to research it. So how do you work with people?
Yeah.
How would they come to you?
Yeah, so I work with people in two ways, in one-on-one or in a group setting, both online and in person. And what's really interesting and what makes it different is we start off by creating a three-generation genealogy. So I'm really asking specific questions to understand, where did love stop flowing? Or what is an estrangement that might have happened between mom and her sister? Or did grandpa die really young, causing mom to grow up without a father figure at a young age? We're looking for the whole flow of love inside of the family, circumstances, losses, even traumas, things that are unresolved that would then play out in the client's generation or even for the client's children. So I guess if you really think of it, we're often including the client's children. And so we're looking across 4 generations to see where that pattern is playing out again. And then from the very first session, we move directly into resolution. Nobody wants to just talk about what's wrong the whole time. We're moving into holding it differently, resolving it. And so much of the time, just connecting. Oh, I've been really influenced and carrying what's not mine all these years. I kind of never looked at it this way. And there can be a real lightness in even connecting those dots before we move into the resolution exercises that help the body to really get it. I think that can be a challenge sometimes with other things people try. We might really understand, that's why I do this thing, but we're still doing it. We've got to bring the body along to be able to get that full change that we're looking for. So we're showing up in our lives and our relationships differently.
Yeah, I can see how that would be impactful not only for you, but it changes the potential for your children if you'll take that. And if you move quantum physics into this equation, when you change how you remember something,
That's right.
it changes how others remember it too.
It's wild.
Because really a memory, and that's what we're talking about right now, is memories that we hold on to. They're neither true nor false. They're just the way that we perceive them.
That's
And we
right.
hold on to them. And it's unique to us, even though we were not the only one in the experience, because the perspective is unique to us.
That's right.
And it might, and in most cases, isn't actually even accurate, because a 3-year-old remembers something, or a 6-year-old, let's go with 6 or 7, because that's really when your memories are a little
very
more
true. Yeah.
able to be formed. But from that perspective, when something happened, and from your parents' perspective, say your mom or your dad, their perspective about that incident, if they even remember it at all, and in most cases they don't, because they had other things that were more important that captured their attention. But if you can change that for yourself, it changes how they remember it too.
It's so interesting. A really pleasant surprise after doing this work. I do this work for good reason. I had lots of challenge in my own family, and how many beautiful, good memories of simple things like a birthday cake my mom made for me when she was, a couple days away from delivering my little brother. We're 8 years apart. So, but our birthdays are a couple days apart. So she's decorating a cake, super pregnant. And I just completely forgotten about that in my hurt, in my defensiveness, in my shutdown. And so this piece of changing that relationship to be more tender and to be more open to that love opened up this floodgates of just simple little kid memories, like you're saying. So it's absolutely true. As we shift the way we've held certain people, incredible things can open up.
And it's empowering, and it allows you to appreciate things that happen. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Fighting a cold, and then
Aw.
this topic kind of does make me emotional. How it empowers you to have and appreciate other people in your life that you might have been harboring ill will towards, or anger, or you just don't want them to be part of your life because they're causing you so much pain. But they're not actually causing you the pain, you're causing yourself the pain.
Isn't that the paradox? Yeah. Yeah. A response to how we wish they would be, the pain of being around someone we love that we think, why do you have to be so down and critical all the time? Or are you really having another drink? And that can be hard to be close to. And when I think we allow those we love to be who they are, to be on their own path, to have our really careful, resilient boundaries when we might place ourselves around them, when it can push our buttons. We've got to treat some of these relationships with a little bit of intentional care so that we don't get hurt wrapped up in it.
Yeah, and sometimes it means, separating yourself from them, and sometimes it can be, you can have intentional encounters with them, where you know that this is a situation, and again, allowing them to be on their own journey, and recognizing that, sometimes things happen, And it's okay. And it doesn't really speak to who you are. It speaks to who they are.
Yeah.
And eventually they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And maybe that was the path that they chose for themselves on this journey.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And you can choose to go along with it or not. But what you do with your own thoughts about the situation is about your journey.
That's right. I had a friend say to me, "Have you ever had your mom irritate you and she wasn't even in the room?" And I sort of laughed and said, like, are you talking like just replaying a memory or how it should have been this way or that way? And it's like, yeah, so how much are we sort of building the frustration or building that difficulty exactly as you're saying, as we're thinking about it, as we're playing it through. And if we can clean up our side of the fence, so to speak, if we can think about it like all the things that have happened in the past, we're carrying it around like this big heavy backpack. And maybe our work is getting free of the backpack, letting go of how it should have been or how it could have gone, and really allowing ourselves to arrive how it is,
Yeah.
acknowledging it for what it is.
Byron Kelly had written the book Loving What Is.
Oh, that's right. That was her first. It's such a great read.
It is a great read, and it's a great reminder that you know you have two choices. You can just love what was and is, or you can be miserable and fight against it and wish it were something else.
That's
Well,
right.
you can remember it as something else. It's totally fine. You can make it up yourself, and sometimes that helps.
Yeah,
You know, it
that's
can
right.
you can create a memory and just hang on to it, and it doesn't even have to be true, but you can remember it as true, and
Well,
over
it helps
time it will
me.
become true.
Well, it helps me to stay in the truth that I will often say to clients, if we look at what happened to your mom or dad, so let's say the dad who was abusive, let's pick a really big one that's really hard to get over, that
Mhm.
there is no, forgiveness for, that this happened, there was a huge injury, emotional and otherwise. And so how do we get over that? And sometimes putting an imagined image over that can feel not real, so it doesn't stick. And so I like to be able to talk with them about, where did dad come from? Why was anger his first go-to? Why was there that distorted love around harming or controlling or any of those things? And we start to look at this way of relating is all that was known. And so it spills over. And so this piece, if that never happened to dad, if dad could show up and throw ball with you and do the puzzle with you and be patient with you, to imagine how would you be able to give that to yourself? That there's this growing part of you that trusts dad would have wanted to give that to you if he'd had it given to him. So that there's sort of that systems way of looking as that travels through the family system, that the change gets to be here with me. So any of those moments, sometimes I think for those of us who've been hurt by our family, self-care can be one of the hardest things to prioritize, because we end up doing to ourselves what the harm that happened to us. We're putting ourselves on the very last of our own list. And so those moments when we can be patient with ourselves, be kind in our own mind, um, set up those situations where, in a way, we're reparenting.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's a large part of learning to love and accept yourself as you are, and
Yes.
being good with it, and not requiring other people's input to determine your value or worth,
Oh, that's a
which
big
I
one.
think is
That's a big one.
huge.
Yeah. And it seems like difficult childhoods often end into that. Now we're looking for validation from maybe the boss or the spouse or the friendships. And we've really got to find a way to give that to ourselves so that it can come from the inside out.
Yeah, it makes it really difficult for other people to have a relationship with you when you don't want to have a relationship with yourself.
That's right. First things first, we've got to get clear with ourselves. You got it.
Yeah. And being okay with, everybody's unique and
Mhm.
not everybody's everyone else's cup of tea. And
That's
that's
right.
okay.
And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you if, Susie doesn't like your personality or your laugh
Or
or
them.
something. Yes, that's right.
It's there's lots of us on this planet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
We're going to get along with someone.
that's
I had
right.
an interesting conversation with someone one time. She was talking about meeting people, and she shifted the way that she entered a room. And
Hmm.
her normal pattern was to go into a room and hope that everyone liked her.
Okay.
And then she lately had come into the idea that she was going to enter a room and wonder who she would like.
Oh, what a
That
shift.
was such an empowering shift of perspective.
Yes. Whenever we're doing that hustling to belong kind of thing,
Mhm.
we know we're not really being who we truly are authentically. And so to come in with that as an undertone, wow, who am I going to click with? Who am I going to be drawn to? Who will I like? It takes the hustle right out of it because we come in with curiosity instead.
Curiosity is such a powerful word. It's just one
Mhm.
of those states of being that opens up the potential
Yes.
instead of, you know, having a set agenda,
Yeah. Or
which,
having a need that needs to be filled in any given case. Yeah.
yeah, it just allows information to appear.
And the right people, to click with because we're not in performance mode. We're just showing up as we are.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
very freeing. I know you have a book about self-regulation that you
Yes.
offer to people. You want to talk about that for a
Yeah, I'd
second?
love to share that with your listeners. So I have a training for the coaches and therapists who want to learn these systemic tools. And I often will say to them, you think people are booking appointments with you to maybe solve their problem or to talk about an issue. But often people are coming to sit with you because you are regulated, because you've got that self regulation that they're looking to find their calm in the storm. And so, the importance as practitioners, as parents, well, as human beings, to find that center and a few suggestions and techniques for how to do that.
That's awesome. Um, so you work mostly with coaches, or do you just work with everyone?
Well,
Who do you
I
work
have
with?
two sort of paths. I have people that are in relationship distress that are looking for some solutions around that. And then my training and courses are really guided from anybody who's in the helping profession that wants to bring in epigenetics and systems understanding to broaden the solutions that they're able to offer their clients.
Oh, that is probably really helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah, I've had such great feedback. We're starting up our fifth year of the training, and it
Mm,
just lights me up. It feels really like a pay it forward energy because I can only see so many people in any given day or week.
yeah, yeah, and it's such an important piece of the holistic puzzle
Yeah.
is really getting a handle on the epigenetics and how it plays into. I know there's all these other different modalities out there, but it's really kind of a foundational piece to me.
It's how I see it. Yeah. Whether you're working with physical health, relational health, we've got to look at where did these thoughts even come from? Why am I showing up this way? Where did this pattern come from? So we can really get a little more spaciousness and freedom around it.
And you're right in terms of health, your physical
Mm,
health. It everything starts in your head. And when the doctor
yeah.
says it's all in your head, well, often it is
That's
all in your
right.
head.
I've always thought that to be such a strange response. Of course. And what are we doing about it? It's affecting my whole body too.
Yeah. And really the whole mind body connection thing
Yes.
is relatively new as far as, people talking about it and recognizing that I have a stomach ache. Well, maybe it's more than just a stomach ache. Maybe it's something that you're thinking about. Maybe it's something that happened that you're not processing properly, and it's manifesting as your stomach's hurting.
That's
And
right.
and it could be things that you're not even aware of, that you brought from like another life, that has come
Yes.
through all of this generations, and now you're manifesting it in your body, and it's trying to get the message to your brain to do something about it.
That's right. And it's interesting in medicine, I might mispronounce it, but I believe the body of focus is psychoimmunology. So this idea that how we're feeling impacts our immune system, and how can we study the effects of stress on immune system depression, and how we are connecting that stomach ache that crops up. What is it about? What were you thinking or feeling before that happened? What are you carrying that isn't yours? It's so nice that we're seeing this sort of shift in awareness to include more. It's great, in fact.
It is really great. I'm excited to see where it's going, because I think the potential for real health in the world is increasing exponentially as people become more aware of the modalities that are available to them to actually heal the things that are causing chronic pain or chronic illness in their bodies.
That's right. We got to get to the source. We got to understand that root cause.
And non-invasive ways.
That's right.
Or non-chemical. You don't even have to add stuff to what you're doing
Yes.
in your life. You just need to work on some of these more base principles, and epigenetics being one of them. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, they can visit my website, which is www.joannalynn.ca. You can find me on Instagram under the Family Imprint Institute. And I've started writing weekly articles on LinkedIn under Joanna Lynn. So you can join that newsletter. And I write all about some of the most interesting research in epigenetics, and some case studies, and a little bit about relationships and what you can do, relationship tips and things of that nature.
That sounds really interesting. I'll definitely have to check that out myself.
Great, great.
So what's the one thing you want to leave the audience with today, Joanna?
Well, I think the encouragement to get curious about their family of origin. So your listeners could even start to build their own 3-generation genealogy. And instead of, Uncle Tim and Aunt Annie, that you really want to look at, how did Uncle Tim's life go? Was he doing well? Did he divorce? Did he have mental illness? Was he happy? How did the relationships connect between mom, dad, grandma, grandpa? So that you have a more of an understanding of yourself and some of the challenges that you might have in your life.
Very good. Very good. I think that's very wise advice.
Can be a fun exercise. Get you asking some different questions around the dinner table.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna definitely try that out myself.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order, or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.